car.
Right now we're hanging out with the one and only Boots Riley. We're down here, right here near Bobby Hutton Park, in front of a house that is, well, they're trying to foreclose it, but people are securing it.
Yeah, well, they had foreclosed it, and while the woman Gayla was at work, the sheriffs came in and kicked her kids out of here a little while ago, and they foreclosed the house. She was 2 months behind on mortgage.
Just 2 months behind?
Yeah, 2 months behind after 15 years. And they kicked her out. She's back in there now, and now we're organizing shifts to stay here and protect her and her family while we pressure the bank to renegotiate.
Why would somebody do that, man? Being out here for 2 months, why would they do that? I mean, 2 months behind. Why would a bank do that?
Well, because the banks are doing a gigantic land grab. First, they created the crisis by falsifying this housing boom and making folks, think that they could buy houses that would continue to go up in value. So even if it was a payment you would be struggling to make, they would tell you, keep it for a year or so and then resell it and make some money. And this was based on falsified evidence that they showed to people.
Right.
And then people couldn't do that, and they started defaulting on their loan, and then foreclosures happened, and then that made an even bigger crisis happen. Compounding on that crisis made people lose jobs. Then other folks had to default on their loans. And what's happening now is that banks got paid all this money and made money from the actual payments, and now they own all of this land, and they're grabbing even more. So that's why they would kick somebody out
after 2 months.
Yeah.
Last time we talked about hitting the economic engines. And so one of the things that's being revisited is shutting down the ports. We had shut down the port of Oakland, but now there's a call to do it up and down the West Coast.
Well, just to be clear, when we shut down the port of Oakland, it was part of a general strike in Oakland. I just want to be clear on that, and that's one of the differences. We didn't just shut down the port. We had a general strike in Oakland, around 50,000 people involved, I'd say. But what's happening on December 12th is that is an action that is three things. One, it's a response to the coordinated attacks that the 1% made against the Occupy Wall Street movement a couple weeks ago, in which they had police force coordinate and brutally attack people and uproot Occupy Wall Street encampments all over the country. Now, we are coordinating an attack against them by having every seaport from Anchorage down to San Diego shut down. And this is including Occupy Vancouver, so this is international. We also just heard that Houston is jumping on board.
Wow.
So it's something that's getting big. There are people that are talking about some ports on the East Coast. We'll know about that soon. Now, we're only 6 days out from December 12th, but if you remember, we called the general strike 6 days out from the last one. So we've got some time to make this a really big action. People are doing outreach at the ports to make sure the truck drivers know what this is about. We are working with rank and file longshoremen and making all of this happen. So that it's not just an answer, though, to those attacks. The other big part of it is that it's in solidarity with longshoremen in Longview, Washington, who are embattled with the grain exporter EGT. EGT is co-owned by Bunge Limited. The whole EGT is a multinational food conglomerate, and they're known for union busting all over the country, and all over the world. And in Argentina, they fled there, owing millions of dollars in taxes and are wanted for doing so. Anyway, in Longview, almost every longshoreman there has been arrested for their actions fighting EGT.
Wow.
And we are doing this in solidarity. We're shutting down. This is not your mama's union struggle. This is a labor action by the people. And we're saying that we are stepping up our game, and we are doing a cross-trade, cross-geographical action that says to the 1%, you're not just going to pick on one little part of us. We're all sticking together. It's kind of like if you come from a big family in the South, somebody doesn't want to go fight one of the brothers because they're going to have to fight every other brother that's in that family. And that's the kind of working class unity we're trying to build. The other thing that we're dealing with this West Coast port shutdown on December 12th is that the truck drivers at these ports are all underpaid, pay per load, no benefits, and have been forbidden from unionizing, and that struggle has been brought upon them by Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is co-owner of SSA terminals, which are all up and down this coast. And
Goldman Sachs is the one that tanked the economy, or played a big role in it.
Yeah. And so all of this stuff is coming full circle. Bungie Limited that I talked about is a Wall Street traded company as well. Goldman Sachs is not just some company that exists on Wall Street and in the boardroom. They're a company that actively squashes people's struggle for higher wages. These port truckers at all of these ports are usually immigrant labor who are trying to fight for better living conditions. So we are doing all of this in solidarity with that and to bring light to those struggles.
Right.
As well.
I remember, it was about maybe 6 months ago, we covered a big action by many of those truckers downtown Oakland, where they were bringing attention to this. At that time, people ignored them because they were mostly immigrants.
Yeah.
And, and the usual type of condemnation came forth.
Yeah.
You should be happy you get a job. Y'all should, this is America. You got to pull yourself up, the bootstrap.
Well, the truth is, I think that line of thinking comes from much fewer people than you would think. But it is the line of thinking that gets put out there the most. Now, I think what's happening right now in the world and in this country is that people with more radical lines of thinking or more progressive lines of thinking are taking action. And everyone that's been so far in the middle are now seeing that there's change that can be made. So though these port truckers struggles in the past have been unheard, they won't go unheard anymore. We're Occupy Oakland, the rest of the Occupy Wall Street movement, we're taking decisive action on these things, and that's one of them.
That's real talk. So what's the plan of action exactly on Monday? What are you asking people that are listening and watching this
on Monday, the first thing is to meet at West Oakland BART at 5:30 a.m. 5:30 a.m. at the West Oakland BART, and we're going to march to the port and shut that down. What happens is we make a safety hazard by blocking the gates to the port. When we block the gates to the port, we make a safety hazard, and the arbitrator comes out and decides that there's been a safety hazard and that the longshoremen have to go home with pay. So longshoremen will not lose any pay on that day. Just the same way as November 2nd happened, they did not lose any pay because it was officially, quote unquote, not an ILWU sanctioned action. Although obviously, I don't have to say much more, but Occupy Oakland and the Occupy Wall Street movement is very on the side of people organizing their labor for collective action and getting higher wages. So
5:30 a.m.
5:30 a.m. That's the first action. Then we'll probably be there for a little while before it's ruled that it's a safety hazard. We're asking people to come and be out there with us. We're organizing food and things out there, things like that. Then we're going to meet again at 4 o'clock downtown Oakland at Oscar Grant Plaza and do a second march to the ports and shut down the evening.
Okay. Well, that's what we'll be on the lookout for. We'll also be keeping an eye out on San Diego, Seattle, Vancouver, Los Angeles, and now we're hearing that Houston may be jumping in the fight, and that's big news right there. So once again, Boots, we appreciate it, and we will also keep an eye out on this house for people that are watching and seeing. Here's a lady who's been living here 15 years, 2 months behind on her mortgage, and they've removed her kids. She's back in right now thanks to the efforts of the crowd that you see here, but this sort of tyranny has got... Right now we're hanging out with the one and only Boots Riley. We're down here, right here near Bobby Hutton Park, in front of a house that is, well, they're trying to foreclose it, but people are securing it.
Yeah, well, they had foreclosed it, and while the woman Gayla, you know, the banks are doing a gigantic land grab. First, they created the crisis by falsifying this housing boom and making folks, you know, think that they could buy houses that would continue to go up in value. So even if and now we're organizing shifts to stay here and protect her and her family, as while we pressure the bank to renegotiate.
Why would somebody do that, man? Being out here for 2 months, why would they do that? I mean, you know, 2 months behind. Why would a bank do that?
Well, because with a payment you would be struggling to make, they would tell you, you know, keep it for a year or so and then resell it and make some money. And this was based on falsified evidence that they showed to people.
Right.
And then people couldn't do that, and they started defaulting on their loan. And then it was at work. They came in, the sheriffs came in and kicked her kids out of here a little while ago, and they foreclosed the house. She was 2 months behind on mortgage.
Just 2 months behind.
Yeah, 2 months behind after 15 years, and they kicked her out. She's back in there now.